So welcome.
Cool, cool.
All right, so next slide.
Jim, are you on slide duty?
Jim, hit it again one more time, please. All right, we're gonna save Julie's introduction and Fiona just introduce themselves. I don't think Richard's on, so we can just skip ahead to you, Jim.
Yay!
I think you're muted.
Great. How about now?
There we go.
There you go.
When you're in screen sharing, you don't get as much of a prompt. I can't see anything on the screen to tell me that I'm muted.
It's annoying.
I'm Jim Shields. I was Fiona's advisor at Big Picture South Burlington in Vermont. And I've been an advisor in Big Picture for about 10 years now. Oh, I'm supposed to show my favorite tool, and I'm kind of ADD and I don't like to commit. So I am having a hard time. I'm going to grab this tool, which is the newest tool that I have. And I want to see it.
Yes.
So this is like a big switchblade, but a saw.
That's terrifying.
And the reason I like it is because I can take it in a backpack when I go hiking on, there's a lot of trails around my house. And when a tree falls across the trail, I can clear it pretty easily for people to walk. So I use that a lot.
You're that guy who, helps out clearing the trail.
Yeah, Jim, I have the exact same saw.
Nice.
Awesome.
That's me.
Okay, next slide.
Oops. Sorry, now I have,
Charlie, you're up.
Oh, all right. So I'm Charlie Plant, longtime Big Picture. Beth and I go back a long time. Elliot Levine, we're all Big Picture old timers with Lisa Niebels. But right now I am the coordinator for the Harbor Freight Fellows Initiative.
Cool. And do you have your favorite tool with you, Charlie?
Right now my favorite tool is a pen. Because
right.
I am switching into an administrative role as the Harbor Freight Fellows Initiative has expanded.
And Charlie, next time you mention old people, please try to mention me. I hired your ass.
That's right. Doc is my father.
Doc is my father too.
Second thought, keep your mouth shut, man.
Doc hired me and he's been cleaning up after me ever since.
That's right.
Cool. And I'm Beth White, and this is a picture of a project that I started yesterday. It involves I have an 79-year-old woman who lives downstairs from me, and she decided she wanted a gazebo, and so whatever young wants, young gets. So I now can build rock walls and shovel 3 loads of sand and a load of crushed stone in a day's work. So a shovel, I guess, was my favorite tool yesterday. But we're super glad you're here. I work with Big Picture Learning, and I have the awesome job of working with the Harbor Freight Fellows. So as you will see, they're pretty amazing. All right. So next.
So we're gonna.
Let's skip Julie and head straight to the Fiona section. Cool.
Woo, okay, I had to unmute. I've got the dogs going crazy about a squirrel outside the door near me, so don't mind that. But as I said, I'm Fiona, and I'm building a tiny house, so that's pretty cool. I started this a very long time ago in my sophomore year, and basically have been doing it the whole time throughout my Big Picture time. I've been like planning it over. Now I'm really starting to get down on it. So Jim, if you want to go to the next slide. Okay, so I was just doing my thing pre-COVID. I got my trailer delivered, which was horribly complicated. I bought it in late May of last year, and it was very expensive. And then I finally got it delivered in December, so it was a long time coming. And this was pre-Harbor Freight Fellow and everything, but I just finally got it, and that was a huge relief. Jim, go back. Nope. There we go. Okay. That was a huge relief. Oh, we lost the dogs. Okay. So then, you can go to the next one now. I became a Harbor Freight Fellow, and part of that was I was working with Chris Lane, my mentor at Habitat for Humanity. We were doing 2 projects. One is the one pictured here, and one was like a proper house. This was a kind of mobile home, but it was still pretty big. I did a lot of hanging doors and flooring and sand and sheetrock and spackling nail holes, and did a fun porch stale railing. And this was the first time I've done like proper building since like 9th grade, when I was doing sets for the school plays. And I've been really stressing about my tiny house because it's not super tangible yet. But the fact that I could finally like walk onto a construction site and do something real with my hands was great for me. If you want to go to the next one, Jim. So, trailer time. I currently am in Maryland. I was in Vermont. I moved down here with the trailer, towing it behind. I was not driving, to be fair, but I kind of wouldn't have had this opportunity if not for the apocalypse, because I wouldn't have been able to finish school remotely, and just all my other, commitments in Vermont that I suddenly didn't have. So I decided to come down here, and I'm really grateful for it because this is basically the perfect place to be building a tiny house. The place where I was living in Vermont was less than ideal. So here we've got like a workshop and we're in the middle of nowhere, so we can't bother people with construction sounds. So that's pretty cool. If you want to go to the next slide, Jim. I have been working with Beth on this blog post for my Harbor Freight Fellowship. And I've been, going through iterations of that just to kind of have a good introduction and way to get the word out there. So that's my priority now on the not actually building stuff side. And on the actually building stuff side, I'm trying to work with Chris to make plans or buy plans and like modify said plans. But I've done like a lot of the initial research. Right now I'm about to buy the materials for the subfloor so that I can start building that, even though I don't have proper plans yet. And you'd be surprised how long it takes to figure out what type of plywood I need. I would think they were all the same. They're not, apparently. But I'm doing that, and it's going pretty well. I'm feeling better about it, especially because I can just walk outside the door and be at my trailer. I'm like, oh, I didn't measure this. Don't worry, I can just walk out. Before, it was at a friend's house, and it was a whole procedure to get there. So that's about where I'm at right now.
Cool, thanks, Fiona. Jim, if you'd go back to Julie's slide. So we're gonna have Julie just introduce herself and her project, and then we'll open it up for like some conversation with our guests. So welcome, Julie.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Julie Torres. I am now a high school graduate from Missisquoi Valley Union up here in Vermont. I'm currently working towards getting my private pilot's license in aircraft. I'm also just working on completing my Harbor Freight Fellow Scholarship. And yeah, I believe in leaving to learn and supporting opportunities for students to achieve self-directed and real-world learning. Next slide, please. So My journey with Harbor Freight and Picture started early in the year. One of my administrators, Richard Bar, here. One sec. He set me up with Dwight.
I think we're losing you, Julie.
Um,
There's like a big lag in the internet.
My internet isn't so great at the moment. I'm wondering if I can put it in the chat.
So try now. I think you're back.
Yeah?
Yes, you're good now.
Not long after I met Beth White, I met my mentor, George Coy. And he isn't in any of these pictures, but he will be. So I started my like personalized path towards my goals. I had a flight lesson when I was rather young, and I wanted to be a pilot when I was young, but I got kind of steered away from that area. And thanks to Richard Barwin and Beth White, I'm back where I want to be. So while school was still in session, I would while school was still in session, I would leave at around 11 a.m. because I had study halls in the afternoon. I didn't really have many more credits to complete. I would go to the hangar and I would start earning hours towards my scholarship and towards my education. I started attending regularly, and then COVID hit. And essentially I couldn't go out in public and see my mentor or learn the things I wanted to learn. But so in these pictures here, the first one on the left, on the bottom, is me and Tony Speranza on my first flight lesson at Franklin County Airport. The top right picture is Adam Eisel's mall, in which for my EAA flight, he took me home on the ice on his skis, and it's just an amazing commute home. It was amazing, beautiful. And then on the bottom right, I was working with Mark there. He's the man in the back of the picture. We were working on his engine, and I was torquing bolts. Next slide, please. Hope I'm not lagging out too much.
You're still with us. You're still with us.
Okay. So I've always felt like I've been like an average student when I'm in an actual school environment. But since I've started participating in Harbor Freight, my vision of how my education looks or should look has changed significantly. I love being in the hangar and I love learning, and it doesn't feel like a chore. It's something I'm really passionate about. And if you've heard the saying, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. That's exactly how I feel, and it fits perfectly. Next slide, please. So during / post-COVID, Beth has helped me get online and back in action really quickly. Like before school came out with online classes, I was jumping right onto my passion and doing what I needed to do to move forward. I started with Sporty's Online, which is ground school for my private pilot's license. And she also helped me get a King's School online course, which is for my aircraft maintenance technician certificate. And also, I got to join other Zoom calls with other high school aviators who are also interested in aviation, and I learned a lot from those. We also participated in interviews, and I just experienced a lot of really powerful at-home learning. As the restrictions started to lift, I got to go back to the hangar, and we practice social distancing and wearing masks and gloves and stuff. But I feel I've been learning so much despite what has been going on, and I'm really thankful to have these people in my life. Next slide, please. So in this left-hand picture there's Miss Beth White, and in the middle we have George Coy, who is my mentor, and me. And we're standing in front of 150 Victor Tango. It's a Cessna 150. And we got our matching shirts. Oh. And on the next slide, that's my blog post, and I wonder if I can link it in the chat. See, copy.
I'll grab it. If
Someone
you-
beats me.
Yeah, you keep
We
doing
got
that.
it for you.
Nice.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
This is on it.
My blog post. So go check that out if you like. And yeah.
So, if anyone has any questions about Julie or I's projects or Harbor Freight or anything,
so
etc.
Jim, if you'll stop sharing right now so we can all look at each other, that'd be great. There we
And you
go.
can either post them in the chat or unmute yourself and go ahead and ask them.
So Fiona, why don't you talk a little bit about like pre-COVID, post-COVID? So, you know, when COVID hit, you were working with Habitat for Humanity, and then suddenly you're not working there. And so what sort of accommodations were made for you?
Yeah, I mean, I basically, obviously I couldn't actually go there and do stuff anymore, but I've been trying to keep in touch with my mentor, which is difficult because he's not a huge technology person, but basically modifying it to more go in and actually working on my tiny house instead of working on other people's houses. And I've had meetings with the gang, Charlie and Jim and Beth, and occasionally Julie and her advisor, in terms of just everything and keeping me together. And that's about where I'm at, unless you're thinking of something that I'm forgetting, Beth.
Nope, that's it. What other questions do we have for the two Harbor Freight fellows on here? And there's questions coming into the chat.
Cool. Devin says, how do you navigate the situations where other adults don't believe that you are legitimately interested in something, like you're too young to be interested? Good question. Julie, do you have any thoughts on that?
So I've had comments from adults in my life who doubted my abilities because not only am I young, but I'm female. And I don't know, I like to prove them wrong, I suppose. I mean, I think there's always going to be some sort of doubt in your life. But for me to be almost maybe, I wouldn't say put down, but that kind of comment or something in your life, it gives me the energy to want to do better. So I suppose that's how I handle it, but everyone's different.
So not all the folks on this call know what a Harbor Freight Fellow is. So what the heck is a
That's a
Harbor
good
Freight
point.
Fellowship, and who is it open to?
I mean, it's basically, my understanding of it being one is it's a fellowship for people going into the trades, and we are just a small sample of said trades. I'm sure, Beth, you can probably give a better explanation.
That's a good start. Julie, do you want to tack on to that?
So Harbor Freight is a tools company, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm doing, I believe, is pairing with big picture learning, right? So they made this scholarship to provide students with opportunities to pursue their own interests. So that's sort of like a joint situation there, I suppose. Like big picture is trying to get you, like, unless you really like sitting in a classroom and just like focusing for like an hour and a half every day on one subject and going to other classrooms, like they want you out of there hands on. And I think it's a perfect kind of fit with Harbor Freight to get you out of the classroom, working with say for me, like airplane engines or tiny houses or what have you. And
And what do you get?
so essentially, huh?
What do you get, and what are the requirements?
So my if I complete, I suppose, what was it, 120
Hours.
hours of
Apprenticing.
work or studying towards my project, I believe I receive $1,000 or 500 to me, 500 to my mentor, 500 to my advisor. No,
You get 1,000,
No.
500 to your advisor, and 500 to your mentor. That's correct. Yep.
Just all
And
of the above.
250 towards tools. Yes. So essentially, in a nutshell, it's a 120-hour apprenticeship alongside an expert in the field of trades. And it could be a conventional trade, or it could be an up-and-coming trade, like some of the ones listed in the chat.
Mechatronics.
I was trying to remember how to say it.
I don't know if that was right.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a good explanation. In terms of the question of how do you navigate the situations, I'm just doing everything out of spite at this point. The fact that I am in a very supporting environment of, like, I had the opportunity to go into big picture my sophomore year, and I've always been in kind of non-conventional schooling. So I've had, you know, a bunch of people being like, yeah, you can build a tiny house. I'm like, okay, great. But then, you know, when I get annoyed or tired or whatever, I'm like, I've come this far. I gotta, you know, I gotta keep going. And if anyone's like, you should just scale down, you know, just like make just the plans for it or whatever. I'm like, no, I'm gonna make a whole house. That's so cool.
Exactly.
Mark said, how do you find the mentors? It looks like you went to where they were. I can't speak for Julie, but I know for me personally, I became a Harbor Freight Fellow like shortly after I turned 18. So I realized, hey, Habitat for Humanity is an option now. So I reached out to their volunteer coordinator, and they put me in touch with Chris, and then we had a little chat, and that was that.
Okay. Yeah, Julie.
So for me, I was put in touch with Beth White first, I suppose, to see if I qualify for the fellowship. And shortly after that, I was put in an interview with both her and George Coy, because Beth White has the contacts. She works at the same airport, or her planes are at the same airport that George is at. So it worked out for me.
But
Beth
it
probably
takes a
could
lot
be your
of-
mentor if she wasn't so busy.
I'm not a mechanic though. Yet. I'm working on my mechanic's license too.
There you go.
Cool. So I wanted to give you all a chance to kind of talk in small groups, and we're going to try to distribute the Harbor Freight folks as best we can. Andrea, I'm assigning you a group since you're kind of affiliated with us loosely, if that's okay. So Jim, if you'll just share the next slide. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to break out for 10 minutes. And what we'll have you do is have small group conversations. We'll do brief. This was a scholar of mine who did that great little drawing there, Emma. She's an aviator from Northeast Kingdom in Vermont. So we're going to do brief introductions in your small groups. And then next slide, Jim. When you're introducing yourselves, please be sure to talk about your favorite building project or tool, of course. And then we're going to send out 2 questions. So after you introduce yourself, we'll send you out 2 questions. The first one is going to be this. Next slide. What strategies do you use to get to know what your learners' interests and goals are? And how do you identify and match resources in your community that allow your learners to pursue their interests? So kind of getting at some of the questions that were in the chat earlier. And then the other 4 minutes is going to be discussing how do we make this type of learning the way of learning going forward. Okay. So when we come back together in a little bit, we're going to be sharing as a whole group. And what would be super helpful is if everybody could, every group could write some notes. And when you come back as a whole group, Jim, you can stop sharing screen now. What we'll do is we'll have you put your notes in the chat, and then folks who want a copy of the chat can have access to those notes and or resources. So you'll get all the links emailed to you at the end of this call. So any questions before we head to our breakout sessions? Awesome, thanks Elliot.
Thanks, Beth.
I tried to capture some of those and put them in the notes as well. You'll also see I posted that Manitoba Education offers 2 credits for paid employment, and I put a link in there around their policy in case you're trying to influence policy in your context.
That's right. And in Canada, only 36% of kids go to a 4-year college upon graduation. Most students are going into a technical program.
So thanks.
Right to work.
Thanks to everyone for putting some of your notes into the chat. I'm wondering if we want to hear from any of the groups who are burning to share with us something that you learned or spoke about in your breakout group that you really think this whole group would benefit from hearing. So anybody brave would like to pop in and share something about what they heard, what you guys talked about? You'll have to unmute yourself.
I'll say something.
Thanks.
Devin had a really cool comment that I liked where he said that taking an interest and like pursuing multiple layers within that interest and pulling it out as far and as thin as it'll go, and only when the interest truly wanes, readdressing it, reevaluating that interest. And I like that. Everything is more than just surface level. There's a lot to every interest. And so you can show ways that it connects that the student may not have even realized. I mean, if they like music, there's 1,000,001 things that can encompass that. So I really like that. And I like the term that I heard in our discussion was passion project, and coming up with passion project ideas, and that being a staple in the classroom. And I really like that and plan to use that as well.
Awesome, Neil, thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to add something. Okay, Beth?
Okay. Yeah, please, Charlie, jump in.
So I think the really critical thing is the relationship. And that's why the advisory kind of structure is so important, because it's the relationship that we develop with the kids we work with that allows them to invite us in to get to know them and find out what they're really interested in. So you have to get to know the youth you're working with, not only just to actually be able to guide them towards something that's actually relevant for them, but also so they trust you enough to want to work for you, whatever. Anyway.
Julie, can you talk about relationships at all?
Again?
Can you speak about relationships and in your experience with relationships in the Harbor as a Harbor Freight Fellow?
Since I've participated in this, I've made many, I'd say, wonderful friends, actually, rather than just people I maybe work around. Everyone's been really wonderful, and they're inspirations and they're helpful, and I've grown to like a lot of them very much. And like my mentor George, we've come to be, I'd say, good friends. I think I have a very good relationship with him, and we've gotten pretty normal. I don't know how to put this. He he paid my sister to clean his pool once or twice, and I'm really comfortable being around him, being around the other men in the hangar, and the occasional woman who stops by. And I don't know, it's Mark as well. I love having him around. He was in one of my pictures in my slides. We had recently went to Chicago to pick up a Cherokee 140.
Yep.
And that was a delightful experience despite how hot it was and how slow we were going.
What do you mean you
Yeah, I
went to
don't know.
Chicago? What do you mean you went to Chicago? How did you
We-
get there? Yeah.
Beth flew.
We flew
Beth-
to Chicago
Beth
in
flew her
another
garden.
passenger airplane. And then,
Yep.
what did you do when you got there?
When we got there, we had to find the airplane we were looking to bring back. We found it, couldn't get it started. We had to stay overnight to work on it. And it was hot and we're all thirsty. We still made it fun, I suppose. And we got it working, and by the next day we were out of there.
Yeah, we had to put in 2 magnetos, a couple new tires.
Bunch of spark plugs.
Yep. Pretty fun.
Can I add something, Beth?
Yes, please.
So ostensibly, the Harbor Freight Fellows program, and this is going to sound weird, is not about developing carpenters or welders or mechanics or airplane mechanics. It's about human development. It's helping youth get a sense of who they are and how to choose a path in life that's fulfilling for them. And it just happens to be the particular lens. But that's the big picture lens.
And what's a couple of other things that you did outside of your Harbor Freight Fellowship this last week and a half, Julie?
Outside of
But connecting because of relationships and proximity. A little bit shy sometimes. You have to.
I've recently went skydiving. Suppose that's what you're referring to, Miss Beth.
That is one of them.
One of them.
Did you do something with Kevin?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Kevin Dwyer is another man at the airport who happens to own a beautiful seaplane. And he was able to take me and another flight student up. And we got to go around the islands of which I live around. And I got to visit my other workplace, Shore Acres. It's a restaurant. And I got to land right on the beach on the lakefront in front of the restaurant and walk up and see my boss, and everyone was, whew. Such a good time. I love meeting people, and it's just everyone's so fantastic and they're willing to help me, and I hope I can reciprocate that in the future.
Thanks. So we have about 7 minutes left. I wanted Charlie to give a little announcement, and then I'd like just to do a popcorn finish, if we could, about what's on your heart right now, what's making your heart sing, and if you would put into the chat also any other questions you have. Yes, Jim.
Beth, can I just follow up on what Charlie said and just add a little story about Fiona that I don't think Fiona would tell because it isn't landing on the beach. Awesome story. So the biggest thing about human development, Fiona, is some of the setbacks Fiona had.
Yeah.
Like getting a donated trailer and having to talk the school into getting it to the property, and talking a whole bunch of adults who could have thought they were crazy into bringing this trailer, and then finding the trailer had asbestos and black mold in it, and we had to have it taken away, and not giving up on the project, and then going out and buying a new trailer that was impossible to get to Vermont. So I would say that the negotiations that Fiona had to undertake to get to the stage where that trailer sitting behind them, which isn't actually, but it's close by, was just some of the biggest learning. And, so that was the human development right there, that navigating all those situations and kind of persevering and staying positive were just a huge part that can't be underestimated.
It was an adventure. One of my like end of the year blog posts for just big picture school stuff was 6 months and $5,000 later, because it took 6 months and $5,000. So that was fun.
And Sierra, can you say how you raised the money? Because that's kind of an amazing feat. Like
I worked.
You worked. A ton.
Yeah. So it was less raising, more working. I worked 2 jobs. I was working at 2 local businesses, one since I was 14, and one since I was 16. I was the youngest person hired at the second one. The other one is kind of a different vibe. It's like a local, everyone knows everyone. So a bunch of the kids who, go there, it's a climbing gym, end up working there and teaching the younger kids. But the other one, I started working at when I was 16, and I was the youngest person there. And then I got promoted and was still the youngest person there, so that was sick. But yeah, I worked like 20 hours a week plus school, and it was exhausting. And now that I'm not working anymore, I'm like, oh my God, I have so much time to do stuff. It's wild.
And how much money did you earn towards your tiny house during that time?
A lot, including what I have now, and plus the approximately $5,000 I spent on the trailer, is about $17,000.
Nice.
Which is a lot, especially for a high schooler for a couple years. So I think I'm doing pretty good. I sometimes think about all the other stuff I could have bought with that money, but
Now you're having a home. And why is it important to live in a tiny house?
Tons of reasons. Thanks for asking, Beth. First of all, even though it can seem expensive upfront, long term, it is considerably cheaper, both because less utilities and stuff like that, but also you don't have a mortgage. I cannot imagine being tied down to paying for something for 30 years. Not about that. And it just makes you, take stock of what's really necessary and not be hoarding things.
Nice. So, I want to give Charlie a chance, but I also want to acknowledge Fiona. So I don't know if it was super clear, but she was able to pivot from working in a conventional trade situation during COVID to with flexibility with this Harbor Freight Fellow to pivot towards building her tiny house, or their tiny house, as their Harbor Freight project during COVID, which was kind of a cool and unique ability that offered. If you want to learn more, don't worry. We have a whole 3 more sessions coming up. Charlie, do you want to share a little bit about what's coming up on Thursday?
Sure. So we've got 3 Harbor Freight Fellows Initiative sessions coming up on Thursdays in freestyle. The first, we have with us today not only the mastermind of the Harbor Freight Fellows Initiative, but one of the troika of souls behind Big Picture, Elliot Washer. Elliot, and just want to acknowledge that. But so we got 3 sessions. We've got the why, the what, and the how of Harbor Freight coming up on Thursdays. The why, what's the purpose behind it? What's the larger goal? The what are the nuts and bolts about it? And then the how to get it started at your school. Elliot?
No, I was asking you what troika means.
It's a 3-horse sled that's let's see, a metaphor for a 3-pronged leadership.
Okay.
Udoc and Mojo.
So before you go, if you want a copy of these notes from today, please put your email address in the chat.
So 2 p.m. Thursdays, Eastern Time, in the freestyle room. There will be a Harbor Freight sessions each of the next 3 Thursdays.
Thank you. All right, so let's go around and what are you thinking about? What's making your heart sing right now? Julie, you start us off. What's making your heart sing?
I was kind of scrolling through the chat, and I feel bad that not everyone's questions can get answered in what short time we have left. But I just wrote down like little quotes. So I have So listening, get to know the student. I think this is very important. We talked about relationships earlier, so I just wanted to bring that back up. I also have normalized getting out there, so normalized leaving to learn. Like we have a lot of traditional schools. Weren't quite used to that yet.
Normalize
And someone, yeah, someone also said, I should have wrote down who, but practicing proactive activities that I guess expose students to what they might be interested in. I liked that comment there. So like interviews and shadow days I wrote down as well. And then just the whole idea of personalization for your own learning, because everyone learns different. And that's
Fiona.
all.
Thanks,
That's all I
Julie.
have.
Last word, Fiona?
Yes. First of all, I think it's a good idea that Julie and I can answer the rest of the questions in the email we send with the notes, because I think that'd be good. Second of all, amazing development. I have spent the last 2 days looking at insulation and plumbing and so many different types of toilets, and it's been wild. But I was on a article, and you know, sometimes you'll be on an article and it'll be like, it'll tell you the basics, but then it'll be like, you know, click here to buy whoever's book or my book or with this. And I'm like, I just want the information now. Like, why are you making me do this? So I click through hoping maybe it's an ebook that's, you know, not super expensive or something like that I can download, not to wait for a book. It was the book I already have. That was my biggest win of at least the last week.
Nice.
So that was super exciting.
Awesome.
I'll
Thanks,
say,
everyone. Elliot?
you know, just as something. So I know Fiona's dad because we talked about hauling the house down to Maryland now. And the part about owning a home and having equity and wealth, 72% of people in the skilled trades own their own homes
There we go.
and have wealth. That's generational wealth. And as we've been talking in our society for the last few weeks about Black Lives Matter, all these other pieces, home wealth is a really, really big deal. And so Fiona, how old are you?
I am 18 and a half.
18 years old and you're going to own your own home.
It's pretty cool.
I wish that for all of our students. And if people don't think that that's tied to the development of themselves, of the self, as Charlie mentioned, I'd like to have a conversation with you about that. I think it is. Your well-being and your wealth and figuring that out. So I'll stop there.
Well, this has been an awesome hour, invigorating. And if you have to go, we won't be offended. But if you want to stay on a little bit longer, I'm sure Fiona, Jim, Charlie, Julie, even Elliot might stay and answer questions or, you know, continue this conversation a little bit. So, but thank you all. And we'll send you out these notes and we look forward to seeing you maybe at some other cool Summerfest things going on.
Thank you, Beth. Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Fiona, Jim.
Thanks, you guys. Yeah. I'm not going to stay on, Beth, because I have a really good excuse. I have to pick up my community-supported agriculture share before 5:30, and it's out in Charlotte. So
go get it. Thanks, Jim.
Doing it up. Thank you, guys. Take care. Sorry about the slide thing. I'm just so bad at that with the Zoom and the PowerPoint. It's so hard.
It's all good. Bye, Ronnie. Yay. Any other questions or anybody else want to chat about anything before we head out? Bye, Robert. Good to see you.
I'm gonna go make sure my door is closed real quick.
So I was one of the ones who was asking because, I mean, especially after in the breakout session and stuff like that, like I don't understand why more students aren't taking advantage of this. And so I'd asked earlier about like, what is the competitiveness of going for something like this? Like how many applicants do you get versus how many you can accept per year?
Charlie?
the funding is not unlimited. And we've grown over a number of years, you know, by starting pilots and then having it take off. So I think the sooner you get involved, the better in terms of being able to support some kids. So I would say let's, unless you can get to if you can't get to the Harbor Freight sessions, we can talk offline about it too, Christy.
Okay.
One of the narratives, Christy, is this is, as Charlie said, a pilot. And it's not supposed to be sustainable in that way. It's supposed to get people to move monies and dollars like Perkins money and workforce development money around compensating young people, elevating the trades and other pathways, and also paying attention to those three measures. And as Charlie said, the development of each and every young person. And that's not a hard lift. They can do whatever the heck they want over here in school. We just want them to have access, because if they don't have access to people, they're going to lose interest in the things that they're really interested in that work. So the idea is to move money, big money around by showing how a program like this can operate and get other, either it's trades unions or CTE programs or federal dollars to move in that direction. So there's room for you now if you got students, but the idea is to get your district to move money and develop programs like this.
Thank you.
Hope that helps, Christy.
Thanks, Charlie and Elliot. What else are y'all thinking about? You stuck around, so you must be thinking about something. Heidi?
I have a question for Julie. I want to know, what does it feel like when you fly?
Does it feel like?
Yeah.
I feel, I suppose, very free and at peace with myself. I mean, there's still rules in the air, like you can't just do whatever the heck you want, but it does feel less constricted than driving, and I'm still working on getting my driving license at the moment. But
Getting your pilot's license before your driving license would be such a power move.
Heidi, with your accent, Billy Elliot movie, that's the most powerful line in the Billy Elliot movie. When they asked Billy Elliot at his exhibition when he danced, what does it feel like when you dance?
When you fly, yeah.
Yeah.
What's it feel like to fly? My dad's got his pilot license.
And that
really,
answer that Julie gave is a very powerful answer.
Yeah. And that was such a good answer, but my dad would be proud of that answer, Julie.
Mm-hmm.
oh man.
And how, I guess to expand on that, Julie, if you could talk, you mentioned something about how you felt kind of average in school. And like, how is it different being at Harbor Freight, and how has that changed the sense of yourself and your sense of average?
So one of the main things I think I struggled with in school is pace. And with Harbor Freight, and I suppose anything after like high school, you're working towards things for yourself. And so you're able to work at your own pace. You're doing it for you. So you feel better about it as well. And in school, I kind of just felt like a number, and I didn't do too hot in classes I didn't really feel was necessary. Like I had this cooking class and barely got by, but then I feel good about learning to be an airplane mechanic, and I feel good about flying because it's, for me, like it's not like something I'm forced to do. I'm doing it because I want to. And
that's no joke. Julie's there on Sundays and Saturdays.
And no one can argue that, like, learning to be a, whatever the actual title is, plane mechanic, isn't learning. Like, you're doing all sorts of complicated stuff, you know? It can't be like, no, you'd be better sitting in a classroom learning math. It's like, no, you wouldn't.
no.
But Julie had a hard time convincing some of her conventional teachers to give her credit for all of this learning that she was doing through this Harbor Freight Fellowship, right?
The only class I got that to work out for was art. My art teacher was able to accept that I was still participating in forms of art outside of art class. And I passed that class with flying colors. And even though COVID kind of, what do we call it, nerfed, it kind of just, I think every student was put to pass this year, despite what your genuine grade was. But it was hard to convince my teachers to understand that I'm still being proactive, even though I'm not sticking to the books.
You know what I would say to Julie and Fiona is you're not just learning the mechanics or whatever. You're learning how to live. You're learning how to deal with problems. You're learning how to deal with ambiguity. You're learning how to, when things go wrong, what do I do? Or if I don't know what the answer is, what do I do? All those kinds of things. That'll be much more valuable, believe me, than anything else.
I've definitely had to do a lot more adult things.
Yeah.
Even when I was first starting my tiny house journey, one of my first steps was contacting a bunch of tiny house companies and construction companies and general contractors and architects, etc., to just get like preliminary research basically. And I made 8 cold calls in like 2 hours. I was like, okay, I'm good with this now. So I think that was good.
Thanks.
Oh, and
Mark.
I also, not to like just
No, no.
keep talking, but I had to register my trailer. I finally got my title. Yay!
Fiona was really nervous about not having the title and driving through multiple states. To get
Yeah,
to
I was driving without a license plate. You didn't hear that from me though.
This is being recorded.
But yeah, so that was complicated. I was like, there's so many things. What does this all mean? The fact that I'm doing this for a trailer and not just a car. Like, I don't have a car. So that was complicated. I had to write a check. That was wild. So it's, it's been a lot of different stuff.
Any other thoughts? Comments? Doug has a robust Harbor Freight group of learners. What are you up to? 140 now, Doug?
No, not quite that many. I would have to say that, the 2 examples here are pretty phenomenal. That's exactly what we want to have happen in Harbor Freight Fellows program. So my situation is that I have so many fellows that I can't really get to know them. So I really work with the advisor almost exclusively, and they're the one who creates the relationship. And so that's a bit different, but of course, when they finish, and I do get a chance to meet quite a few of them, that's pretty rewarding. They a lot of them are just so cool, and they have the opportunity to get. So that's and they grow up a lot. So it's pretty amazing. So,
Yeah, great, cool.
So
well, thank
I just
you.
dropped in at the end here to see how things were going and how this is going to work for the Summerfest. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Doug. Awesome.
You
All
can
right.
stick around, Doug.
What'd you say, Elliot?
You can stick around, Doug. Good to see you.
I got chickens to feed.
Thanks,
I got to
Mark.
get out to the farmyard.
Yes, we have chickens and CSA farm shares to pick up. Alicia, how is your?
Priorities.
Yes, and we have work to do, hanger stuff. tiny house stuff. Awesome. Well, it's good to see you all. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.